Ancient Egypt now faced its first major political crisis, for the power and apparent divinity of the pharaoh that had been so very important in the Pyramid Age had now vanished. Everything that bound Egyptian society together had begun to fall away, and Egypt was plunged into a dark age. In this time of growing uncertainty, when the Egyptians had lost faith in both the monarchy and state-run religion, they increasingly turned to the power of magic. This is a rather unsettling thing. It's an ancient Egyptian mask. It's almost 4,000 years old, and it's made of linen, covered in a thin layer of plaster, and then painted predominantly black with colours picked out on various features. Of course, the Egyptians are well known for making elaborate arrangements for their afterlife. The death mask, placed over the mummified body, recreated the features of the dead to make them recognisable to the gods. But this mask is different. It was made to be worn by the living. And we know this because of the very distinctive eye holes, which you can see there. And this would allow the wearer to see around them. You can imagine when this was applied to the face, fastened on, tied on behind the head, it would transform that individual into a completely different entity. Traces of paint on the linen reveal how it might have helped the wearer embody some form of magical being. Whoever wore this was going to some effort to transform their appearance, to try and tap into the hidden forces of the gods and to control the world in which they lived. It's as if the Egyptian individual that wore this was trying to take charge of their own destiny. But the mask isn't the only evidence of magic. For in their dark ages, the Egyptians increasingly began to write out curses and spells on pots and figurines. Scrolled across one was the curse, "Die, Henui, son of Intef," a form of magic sufficiently small scale to be performed within their own homes. And one of the most graphic ways they did this was to take a piece of clay or a simple pot like this one and write upon it the thing or the person that they wanted to control. They often used red ochre because red was associated with the powers of destruction. So if I was doing this, I'd put on it the thing I'd want to stop, which are early morning calls and alarm clocks. So you've got to imagine Egyptians from all walks of life doing this. The priest wanting to protect the pharaoh, the soldier in battle against an enemy, or simply a hated love rival. So all sorts of Egyptians could be on the receiving end of something like this. And then, to activate the curse, they smashed the pot. It was a symbolic act to annihilate the name of the enemy, and therefore to control that enemy. Ooh, that does feel better. Not unlike voodoo, such practices are found in many ancient cultures, and Egypt was no exception. But it's far from the way we imagine the formal, time-honoured rituals of the temple, led by the king at the head of the religious hierarchy. This is an Egypt that's becoming more suspicious, more fearful, and more aware of the threats to their world. Natural disasters, political breakdown, and foreign powers. And this little wax figurine is a means to control anyone that threatens the balanced order of Egyptian life. Welcome to the Age of Fear. A time when every element of Egypt's worldview was in doubt. Their faith in their king, in their land, and even in their gods had all faltered. This is one of the lowest points in Egypt's long story, and its effect reverberated throughout the Nile Valley. The king, traditionally based in the north, was no longer the source of wealth, so royal officials abandoned court and relocated back to their hometowns throughout the country. Disunited, Egypt reverted back to how it had been 1,000 years earlier, breaking up into a series of local regions called nomes. And now a new kind of leader emerges to dominate the Dark Ages. No longer a single king, but multiple warlords. And we know much about one of them because he left his detailed autobiography in his rock-cut tomb at Moala, well away from the usual tourist sites. His name was Ankh-Tifi. Now, Ankh-Tifi is a small-time official who's worked his way up through the ranks to become the regional governor, or nomarch as it's known. And in the declining central government, the power vacuum that opens up is now filled by the Ankh-Tifis of this world. Ankh-Tifi's tomb is quite modest by ancient Egyptian standards, but its interior walls tell of his rise to power. And Egyptologist Gary Shaw is going to help me unravel Ankh-Tifi's story.
You can see the man himself.
Ah, the great man.
The great man carved, standing there.
He's got a great hairstyle.
He does.
That is lovely. I'm liking him already.
Yeah, the man himself. He has a great tomb as well.
The hieroglyphs and images that fill the walls reveal how Ankh-Tifi exploited the power vacuum at the end of the Pyramid Age, reducing the king to nothing more than a footnote.
The only time you see the name of a king in the entire tomb is right here. This tiny little cartouche.
Oh, it couldn't be any smaller. Look at the size of that.
This is Neferkare, and that's it.
Is that it in the old tomb?
The old tomb, the one mention of a king. And just, I think that really emphasises just how important he thought he was alone. He didn't need to mention the pharaoh. He didn't need to say that the king told me to do this, so I did this because of the king's favours. He just did it himself.
That is extraordinary. I think that cartouche alone of everything in the tomb encapsulates this whole period. Kings have been reduced to something on a minuscule level, and the local rulers are shown on a huge scale, and it's all about them, isn't it? Ankh-Tifi had enhanced his own political career and wanted to ensure the gods were in no doubt as to his importance. So the elaborate language, once exclusive to the king, was now part of Ankh-Tifi's own boastful propaganda. This warlord was an egomaniac.
He also says that he's a hero without equal, without peer. And you get that here. I'm a hero without peer. And pretty much almost every inscription in this tomb ends or includes this statement at some point inside.
And what did he do to kind of justify these claims?
He emphasises all the good things he did for the people. This was meant to be a time of drought and famine, so we're told in the texts, and he tried to guide them through this. He was managing it by feeding everybody and doing all sorts of good things, giving bread to the hungry, ointment to those without ointment, and sandals for those who were barefoot, and wives for those without wives.
So it's basically telling us about a time of turmoil.
Yeah, but he's probably just over-exaggerating, because the more he exaggerates just how awful it is, the more great he looks when he says, well, these are the nice things I did for everybody.
Yeah.
And you get this here. He talks about the entire South dying from hunger.
Oh, look at that. That's a really graphic hieroglyph. I love that.
The guy falling over,
He's dead body.
He's definitely dead.
Yes.
But then it gets even worse. It says that every single man is eating his children. He didn't allow this to happen in his nome, of course. Where he lived, everything was fine. And at the same time, he's also a fantastic warrior, we're told over
inevitably. Here. How did I know that was coming?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. These texts on this particular column talk about his abilities as a warrior.
In his biggest boast of all, Ankh-Tifi, the local hero, almost claims the status of a god.
I am the beginning and the end of mankind, since nobody like myself existed before, nor will he exist.
In Egypt's